I can't remember every race that I rode at Henley, but I can remember the last one. And I can remember how I felt after the race, absolutely drained and exhausted. I had never felt stronger in my life.
When you're with a crew that's really swinging, and everybody is together, they're hitting it right on, it's a feeling you don't get anywhere else you do.
I remember my first race ever. You know, I was wearing my uniform, had the P on the back, and I remember specifically, I won't forget this, thinking like, wow, I'm representing Princeton University, and I have to, do my best. Knowing that you put everything that you have into the race, it just gives you this great feeling of you've gotten your body to do things that ordinarily you wouldn't even dream possible.
I remember the end of that race most vividly. We wished we'd had a recording of our coxswain Seth Lesser's exhortations, the last 20 strokes, 26 strokes, calling out the years that we'd lost since 1961, the last time we'd beaten Harvard, starting out with 1960, 1963, 1964, and he didn't quite get up to 1982, but it was the most dramatic finish.
Pretty much anything you can win is here right now. Last year we had the heavyweight men won the national championship for the first time in history, and the lightweight men were national champions, and the women were second, which is quite a feat to have a team that has that kind of depth. And I think the main reason for that is just the fact that everyone works very closely together. It's not like you're on the Princeton men's team or the Princeton women's team or the heavyweight team or the lightweight team. You're on the Princeton crew.
With everyone being equal in this boathouse, it has just been a fabulous thing. And it's still not that way in any other boathouse in the country that I know of. And I really attribute that to the reason they've all been so successful, because they help each other.
My memory of the boathouse in that era was just one of a very happy, positive community where all three programs really got along and interacted. I just felt that I was part of this thriving, bustling boathouse community. I do know from talking to some of the women who came, before me that was really not the case for the first few years.
I was hired to coach the women for 2 years. They talked me into it. And looking back, it was a great decision. I remember they also, a couple experiences where we had to literally drive in these old checker limos, which was a riot. We didn't have any, we were like second-class citizens here. And we had to drive a checker limo up to the head of the Charles. We left at 10 o'clock in the morning and arrived at 10 o'clock at night because the thing would die going up the hills. And these kids never wavered. They were really unbelievable.
At that time, there was a concern that the women might be coming to the boathouse to socialize rather than to be serious oars women, and so they were constrained to row 6:30 in the morning.
And these women came down and they just said, we're going to do this. And every time they got an answer no, they just said, no, we're going to do this. And for me to be sort of a champion of them as their coach was a great lesson.
We had a lot of spirit, we had a lot of determination, and we worked hard. And I think that's what earned us respect, or began to earn us respect among at least some of the other athletes, was that we proved we were willing to be down there every day in the dark and the rain and work just as hard as the men and try just as hard.
Our first spring, we won the Intercollegiate Women's Rowing Championship in Connecticut. I've never experienced a thrill like that win. That was really exciting. In fact, they threw me into the lake there.
So now, we mix the women right in with the men. The kids think that this is normal. Oh, yeah, so I'm wrong with the men today. Oh, I'm wrong with the women. I'm wrong with Lori today.
We've worked hard at achieving an environment here where we all support each other. We're all part of the same team. We're all part of the same boathouse. And it takes work at times, and it takes, like any partnership, it takes a little give and take. But it's the reason I coach. It's the reason I continue to coach, because I love that environment. I love that relationship.
Everybody knows who Gordon Sykes is. Not only was he one of the best coaches, but he was a coxswain himself. People might say, producing winning crews. It's a sign of a great coach. But how does he get the winning crews? Well, it's a combination technical, but also if he's really a great coach, he sells them on himself.
Larry Gluckman brought to the varsity level the enthusiasm with us freshmen, being part teacher, as all coaches are, and part salesman. I believed in his wares.
Roll. Loop now. Swing it easy. Well, a winning is a crew that's perfectly timed. They've got to be perfectly together, and then the men must really be able to punish themselves. I think that intestinal fortitude is the thing that really pays off along with that timing.
When I started rowing, there were wooden boats and wooden oars and no cox boxes and all that stuff, but it's still not on the end of the oar that makes the thing go, fortunately.
The coaching was great. I didn't realize how much my coach had taught me and how well he taught me to row. When I finished and started rowing with other people, you know, I kind of looked around like going like, didn't you learn this stuff this second? Didn't you do that drill that teaches you this, you know? And a lot of people just didn't have the base technically that I think I got here.
And it's really rewarding to see people really put out their solid efforts and become a fact at Princeton that that's what's expected and what ought to be done. But then you get a perspective, as I have moving away from Princeton, that in other places, that work ethic just doesn't exist.
Lori, who was the freshman coach at the time, somehow managed to take a group of girls who had rowed before for the most part and turn them into Eastern Sprints champions. And it's really exciting to see them get enthusiastic about rowing, and it's very contagious.
We all can learn from each other. You know, I've gotten a lot of knowledge from Joe Murtaugh or from Curtis or from Lori, and all the coaches that have been here since I've been here. Like each boat has 6 coaches.
We all work very closely together. Everyone is knowledgeable. I mean, we have national team coaches. I can ask the Olympic coach a question about my women's team, you know. There aren't very many places where you can do that.
I competed in the Olympic Games. I've won medals at the Olympics. I've coached a boat at the Olympics that won a medal. Well, I got to tell you that the emotion that I feel when I go to the Eastern Sprints or to the Intercollegiate Rowing Championships is about 10 notches above what I felt when I was coaching the Olympic team.
Somewhere around 80% of a 2,000-meter rowing race is aerobic. In other words, dependent upon the cardiovascular system. And approximately 20% is anaerobic, or the muscular system. And our training fits that model. We're able to mimic the rowing motion pretty successfully when we're not able to row on the water, like now when there's lots of ice out there, by rowing on the ergometer and rowing indoors in the tanks.
We'll row the ergometer 4 times a week. We'll lift weights twice a week, and we'll row in the tanks twice a week. And some of those are overlapped, a half an hour here and a half an hour there, 45 minutes on, 15 minutes here. If there is a nuts and bolts, it's hard work. It's hard work and continuous hard work.
They're the kind of kids who give a task and they think about it, they act on it, they reassess it. I guess the coaches.
I think that what the sport offers is an opportunity for people who are willing to work hard, rather than somebody who might just be genetically gifted.
It's one of the sports at Princeton that you can start as a novice, having never done it before. Lori, my coach that first year, just made goals for us all, and pushing your body to lower scores and lower splits and faster rowing and better technique, and it just involves more hard work, and I think it's more than anyone could ever have imagined.
You learn consistent good work ethic, and you learn to take challenges. You learn to be courageous. You learn what it feels like to deal with defeat.
God can't help them with that ergometer. They're out there doing it themselves, like they're naked. You know, they're out there by themselves. They have to do this workout. They have to achieve a certain score, and they have to do it on their own. And sometimes they can't do it. So being able to deal with setbacks, I think, is a lesson that they're going to learn while they're here.
Princeton Rowing taught me not to give up, taught me that one can reach down and grab hold of something more than oneself.
On a good day, there's nothing better, and you leave practice so excited, and on a bad day, it's the dumps.
It gives you the perseverance to stay with it when you think you're failing, and to see things through in life. And it's that little net that catches you when life isn't going so great.
It's not a wonderful feeling to have your pulse going at 190 beats a minute or higher if you're younger, and your lungs turning inside out. I guess I always sort of knew that real men rowed.
Some of the horror stories that you hear are myth. I mean, we don't get people up at 4 in the morning to go row. I mean, they don't train 7 hours a day.
But what we do in that hour and a half is the quality is so high. I mean, you see it.
It was pretty rigorous training, and clearly through the winter months, we had a lot of tank training and ergometer work and things of that nature. But through it all, you really do build a camaraderie and a sense of team unity.
You discover something new about yourself and about other people every day.
I think part of the lesson that you learn from crew, part of the joy of it is the sacrifices you make. I mean, it's an all or nothing sport.
Those moments when you get what they call swinging the boat, when everybody is kicking along at the same time, they're wonderful moments. But I think that that's not the holy grail of rowing. Times when you don't want to be out there, when your butt hurts, when your hands got blisters on them, and you're still out there.
As we were training, the water was freezing on the oar and freezing on our sweatpants. But we were so into actually being out on the water for the first time and practicing everything we learned inside that even freezing to death didn't matter.
You do all this training, gobs and gobs, and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours to get your body in this condition for 6 minutes.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Are you ready?
Rowing has to be the amateur sport. You have to do it because you love it. There's no other reason.
They'll never go on to make multi-million-dollar salaries in the NBA.
When we won, we would always take the jersey or the shirt of the opposing crew, and we would call it KATN.
That was something actually that I was always a little jealous of the men, in the sense that when shirts are exchanged, that there's an opportunity to, meet your counterpart in the opposing boat.
I remember actually the gentleman from the Navy boat asking, as we were collecting shirts, he came over and said, "Who's in the 3 seat?" Being 155 pounds. When I raised my hand, he said, "No, not the coxswain, the 3 seat."
The comradeship that came with it, the team consciousness that came with it, seems stronger in crew than in just about any other sport.
There's just something magical about getting in a boat with other people who have the same goals that you do and have been working as hard, and it just all comes together.
You can't draw it, you can't photograph it, but you feel that rhythm, and it is very special.
I think it's like a symphony. Everything sounds perfect, and the boat feels light, and you can feel the acceleration.
Rowing's a very simple sport. You know, it's a straight line on your ass going backwards.
The toughness that it takes, and the power, and the courage that it takes to put yourself on the line and to crank on it. It looks beautiful to the spectator, but I can tell you when you're in a boat, it feels like hell.
Sitting in a boat going backwards is really painful? Yeah, it's a mud boat.
Yeah, we're all crazy. Slightly anyway.
I take care of all the equipment. If there's damaged boats, ergometers, travel, drive the boats to races. So you want to make sure you go over all the equipment, things that have a lot of stress on them, like the riggers, the oar locks, check the collars on the oars, and that, so you don't have any mishaps, because the kids train very hard for 7 or 8 races, and you don't want to miss a race because something was overlooked.
When the freshmen come down the first day and they see this magnificent boathouse, I think that they think that, well, this is normal. You know, I guess everyone has their own boathouse and everyone has their own lake. I take them through a boathouse tour, show them the lake, and I say, look, one thing I want everyone here to understand is that everything your eyes come in contact with down here was donated by alumni.
Boats get turned over on the average here about once every 3 years, and racing boats more often than that sometimes. And without that kind of support, you don't have a successful program.
At the onset, convincing Andrew Carnegie to spend a lot of money to build a gorgeous lake, which is still the best place to row in the country, if not the world. The class of 1887 built the boathouse, and essentially every stick of equipment inside the boathouse is paid for by our friends.
This is a lake built just for oarsmen. You have full-time coaches. You have the top-level equipment. This boathouse is, you know, far and away the best boathouse in the country for collegiate rowing.
I felt so strongly about Princeton rowing that at the time of my 25th reunion in 1982, I decided I would donate a shell to the lightweight crew.
Race boats 4 and 8 are around $18,000.
My wife found out how much a shell cost and asked me if I was sure that I could afford that, and I said, I can't afford not to do it.
We're now contemplating developing a women's lightweight crew program. And the alumni have enabled us to consider that option because they've been extraordinarily generous in terms of gender equity.
We're going to have a massive need for additional support for women's crew that we have not yet, a level that we have not yet stepped up to. We'll do it. I don't know exactly how, but we will. We've always done it in the past.
I look at a lot of other sports on campus and around the league, other rowing teams, they have separate friends groups. There's a lightweight friends group, a heavyweight friends group, a women's friends group. And PORA right from the start decided that they were going to support Princeton rowing.
When we talk of Princeton rowing, we don't just talk of the athletes down the boathouse every day, but I talk of Princeton rowing, you talk of everyone that's ever stepped into a shell, you know, in this university, because they're the ones that support us.
There's no guarantee that we're going to have as good a season next year as we had this year as far as trophies is concerned. But as far as the dedication, development of each individual rower as a person, as an athlete, the learning process that they go through, that the coaches go through, that'll happen. There's no question about that. We know that'll happen.
All of a sudden there was a crunch right under my seat and water started welling up into the boat. And there was a police launch with a press photographer on board. He took a picture of us sinking in the Potomac River.
But I was always rowing forward. But consequently, since then, I've noticed that whenever I get by a shirt or a jacket, or the shoulder on that side has to be much longer than the one on this side. So that's the emblem of a port side rower.